What's going on, Packers fans? Welcome back to the Carry the G Radio, the podcast with Aaron Nagler and Billy Schmidt. Billy, it's been a while. You went down and were all professional down at the Final Four last week. How was that?
It was fun. It's always fun to act like you're important and act like you have any standing in there,
Sure.
right?
Right.
I am as much of a casual college basketball observer as we would probably make fun of for the NFL, right?
Sure.
Like
Right.
once the combine is over, Super Bowl combine was over,
Right.
focused in pretty hard. That's March. They don't really like me down there. However, it's so fun to be right in the heat.
In the mix.
Dude,
Yeah.
right in the
Of
mix. And you know
course,
what,
right?
Nags? It is so like we got to see Radio Row for the combine. That's a
Right.
massive spectacle. This is a much tighter knit spot. They set everything on up. You walk on in, help everything on out, talk to all these coaches who are all pissed. It's
That
awesome.
they have to do any of this?
Yeah,
They just want to
100%.
focus on the game, and there you are asking annoying questions. Yeah, that's the life.
All they want to
right
do is
there.
get a new transfer kid in for next year so they can be in the Final Four next year. They
Right.
don't want to be doing this 8-minute radio hit,
No,
but
sir.
it's always fun to be able to sit in those conversations.
You know what else is fun? Going to Brazil to watch the Packers play a
That's what I'm
football
talking
game.
about.
Let's go. I mean, it's funny because I do remember when the specter of the possibility of the Packers opening the season against the Eagles in Brazil first kind of seeped out into the internet ether, as it were. I remember you talking about it on the radio, and you sounded pretty confident that this was going to happen. And this is months ago.
Mhm.
So I just want to know what did you know and when did you know it? Because obviously today things finally got announced.
Yeah, I wish I was that smart. I wish I was that important and had like sources on it. Be
Yeah.
honest with you, Nags, it was process of elimination, right? Like you started
Right.
going down the list for all the Mark Murphy competitive disadvantages. That was one of the reasons why they weren't going to add in an NFC East team, right? You can't play a divisional game. All due respect, no one cares about the Jaguars.
That's
right?
fair.
Like, and
Very
you
fair.
started like ripping it down. They weren't going to take the Pittsburgh Philadelphia game out of the state of Pennsylvania. I didn't
No
think.
chance.
There's
No
no
chance.
reason to.
Right.
So it was Cleveland or Green Bay. And both are, for this sake, now they're both iconic brands,
Old
right?
school football
Old
brands.
school
No
brands,
doubt.
right?
No
You
doubt.
know that synonymous with it. They would have been able to travel. God bless the NFL if they put Deshaun Watson on opening
I
night.
just couldn't see that happening.
Yeah,
Yes,
so it felt like
no.
an easy dub. It felt like it was over
Yeah,
at that moment.
and the fact that there is such a fervent fan base in Brazil for the Green Bay Packers. Now, it's a Philadelphia home game, quote unquote, but that crowd is going to be kind of like what we saw in London. It is going to be almost all Packers fans, and I hope the Packers show up as much as the fans do, because God knows in London that was a phenomenal week. Game day itself was magical until Packers went 3-and-out in the second half, and then it all kind of started falling apart. I can't have that again, Billy. Cannot.
Yeah, and you know what else we can't have, Nags, and I hope that this is part of the process now, right? Because now you get 6 months to prepare for it,
right?
And that it's the first week.
That helps.
There's no excuse for you to not take the entire week in Brazil. Similar to, now it didn't, the way that it played on out for the Miami Dolphins was not the way that you would have liked for them to go to Germany, because I think they got down 21 rip and lost 24-21 or whatever to Kansas City, who Kansas City, same deal when they went to Germany. They've been airing games in Germany for 10, 12 years. So they had a huge fan base there. I don't know if the Packers' rights are down in Brazil, but they
don't have marketing rights, but they have an insane fan base. It's
huge fan base, right?
Rabid.
Yeah. And that's, talk about competitive disadvantage. There we go, Mark. There we go. We got to get one. We got to get one. But McDaniel's thought was, if you get to where you want to go at the end of the season, he said this in the presser, you have to take your whole operation to another city for the Super Bowl for a whole week.
Yep.
Why would we not practice that operation in real time in the regular season? To me, that makes total sense. I hope they embrace that part of it, because it felt like through the entire offseason, once they announced the London game, that it was pushed back throughout.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I remember listening to you guys on the radio, and Kuhn really kind of went after LaFleur about his attitude regarding the game. And I get whatever messaging you have with the guys in the locker room or behind closed doors is one thing, right? But you got to understand the public nature of the gig and what the vibe you're putting off to, for lack of a better term. And I hadn't thought of it until John brought it up, but he was dead on. Like every time LaFleur was asked about it, anytime LaFleur talked about it, it was real dour and very kind of, oh, this is really annoying that we have to do this kind of message that, I mean, again, I don't know what he was saying behind closed doors, but that certainly seemed to be the vibe around the team heading into London.
Yeah, and you set that kind of agenda for it. You've set that kind of vibe, as you said. It's only gonna go from there. You're the head coach. It kind of starts with you. It also was a massive conflict of what the most important player on your team had said, because leading up to that, Aaron was all gung ho.
He's wanted like, it in the worst
let's go
way.
all week. Yep. Let's hang out. Let's embrace ourselves in the culture. And that butting of heads was, I mean, I'm not going to say that's why they went on a 5-game losing streak. No. That was because they went 3 and out to start
Aaron
the entire second half.
The last freaking play of the game.
But that it all played into it. Yeah. Yep, it was a snowball from there in 22.
It's fun. And you mentioned Rodgers. The other kind of aspect of this announcement that I keep coming back to is, okay, this is the second time now during Matt LaFleur's tenure that he will have a week 1 game on the road at a neutral site. Didn't go so well last time down in Jacksonville when they had to play the Saints.
Ooh, yeah.
And again, there was a stadium filled with Packers fans, right? Mm-hmm. And those fans seem to travel a hell of a lot better than the Packers did. And clearly that was back when Aaron was in town and they weren't, playing a lot, if at all, in the preseason when it came to the starters on both sides. We saw them play the starters almost all preseason last year. You got to think that continues this season, if for no other reason than to get ready for this game.
I love that you bring up that Jacksonville game, because I went down there. One of my best friends lives down there. We had a whole crew.
Packers fans descended on that game.
Yeah, we were 4 of 20,000 Packer fans that were there out of the 28,000 that made it, right?
Crazy.
All the Saints fans were like, "Hey man, we're just happy to be alive. We found out our house is still standing.
Our house is still there.
That's
a win. Yep, no doubt."
And then they just got drummed.
Gosh.
I thought you were going to start pointing towards the season opener in 2019, his 10-year opener.
Yep.
Of like the most hyped up games. I also thought a big one for it was, Nags, who's the marquee? Who are the ones that they're going to put it on as the NFL is opening it up? It was Jordan Love and it was Jalen Hurts. Those are two guys that they're hoping
are the next wave.
The next wave of great quarterbacks, and you get to show them off to the entire world.
What do you make of this Eagles team that the Packers are set to face? Because, that's a team that was almost, I guess you'd say, diametrically opposed to the Green Bay Packers in 2023 as far as coming out so hot.
Yeah.
10-1 to start the season, and then absolutely falling apart down the stretch, where with the Packers, obviously they got hot beyond belief down the stretch. Eagles made a lot of changes in the offseason.
Yeah, big ones.
2 new coordinators, went and got a marquee running back. I'm fascinated to see just how the Packers approach this game against a team that, I mean, it's going to be, I guess, some faces that you're familiar with, but you don't really know how they're going to approach either side of the ball. Like, clearly there's a system in place on defense that you're familiar with, but man, that's a lot of unknowns they're heading into in week 1, on top of the fact that it's a week 1 game, which is already filled with like tons of just weird stuff each and every year.
Unscouted looks is their favorite tag word, right?
Looks, yep.
You know what kind of offensive coordinator Kellen Moore is. You know what kind of defensive coordinator Vic Fangio is. You don't know exactly what they're doing with them. I love all the changes the Eagles made this year. Outside of losing Kelsey, which I think we all kind of knew they were going to.
Right. That's a significant loss.
It's a massive loss. Yeah, it's one of their captains. It's one of the pillars of their organization.
Best players on their team. Yeah.
Yeah. No, if anybody can, just from a talent standpoint, though, replace them in the trenches, Howie Roseman's shown that he can do that.
He knows what he's doing.
Kuhn and I got into a good back and forth. I love what the Eagles did this year. I like the Eagles more than the Cowboys this year. I like the Eagles.
Oh, the Eagles at least have done things. The Cowboys have done precious little this offseason.
Yep. Like if there's tiers here, I think the Eagles are in that one tier right now with San Francisco, Philadelphia. You probably throw Detroit in there.
Yeah.
And I think right below that is that second tier, which is Green Bay, Dallas, and I would have put the Rams in there, but they've lost their captain and their interior heart and soul, and Raheem Morris, who I think is way more valuable than you could think of. Just a defensive coordinator, Zach Robinson, going to Atlanta. So I think those teams are right there. I think the Eagles are still going to be one of the classes of the NFC. So that's one of the things also, just from a Packer fan standpoint, Marcus, my man that cut the promo for Packers Brazil.
Yes.
I'm mostly happy for him and all the other cheeseheads.
Yes.
Secondly, I'm happy for the Packers because I think they get a win getting this team before they get their bearings underneath them in Philly.
Oh, no
and
doubt.
Can potentially get rolling.
I'm interested in your tiers here. So you don't have the Packers in that top tier, huh?
I got them just below.
I see how that works.
Yep.
I see how that works. Could the draft potentially change your mind as far as maybe bumping them up a little bit? Because I understand there are a few holes. We are more familiar with the Packers than any other team as Packers fans, as we obsess over this day by day. So we know it very well. We know where those weaknesses are, but it's not like every other team isn't dealing with some of the same stuff. So when I look at the team and how they progressed last year, now obviously it's not a given. Nothing's a given when it comes to picking up where you left off, right? When 2024 kicks off, you got to do the work week by week, etc. But man, I have a hard time not putting the Packers right in the mix with those top teams.
Yeah, they're to me, and that's why I kind of went with the order. I think they nip right at the Detroit heels to be kind of the third team in that group, right?
Okay.
Like, I mean, because I do just need to see how they replenish the interior of their defense, right?
That's
like
fair.
That's the biggest part. I mean, you still have to find another starting safety. Probably still need to find another starting corner.
Yep.
Another starting linebacker.
Definitely
potentially.
Need a linebacker, right?
But I could see before they start week 1, I put them into a top 4. But I also think that San Francisco's ahead of it. And then Philadelphia's right here. And I do think Detroit's lower than most people have put that at. Like, I do need to see that outfit repeat it one more time.
Yeah,
with
but
some
that's
of the
the
losses
thing.
that they had on defense as well.
Here's the thing. I do think they've had a decent offseason. I think Holmes is a good GM. But I'm with you, man. I don't know. I guess it's in my blood, right? Like, I've watched Detroit be so bad for so long. It's kind of like, okay, that's great. You had a really cute 2023, but do I trust that in any real way? Not really, because it's Detroit. And I understand that that's completely, just feelings driven rather than any real analysis. But I think they've had a decent offseason. It's going to be fascinating to watch what not only the Packers, but the division rivals do in the draft in a couple weeks. You excited for the draft? You pumped up? You got your draft guides. You ready? You got your prospects all sorted out. Which guys you want Green Bay to go after?
That was a terrible question, Max. I love you, but that was a bad question. You know how fired up I am for the draft. Dane Brugler's Bible came on out.
There you go.
Come on now. Cheesehead TV draft guide's already been out a week.
Let's go.
So you can already roll through that. More than anything, I love this time where everyone tries to throw bullshit at everybody else.
It's lion season, baby.
Stinks.
Yep.
See what sticks, right?
Yep.
So everything stinks from now until the second day of the draft. Day 3, total crapshoot. You just pray and hope that your personnel department is good and start plucking and seeing my favorite college players and be like, yeah, glad he's getting a chance. Yeah, glad he's getting a chance. I love college football where this is one of my times where you watch all these guys on Saturdays where personally I just get excited for them to be able to get to the NFL. Some people complain about it and say, well, I got 350 prospects and only 10 of them are going to be on the Packers. Sure. That's a way to look at it. I 1000% understand that vantage point. But I just, do I know 350 guys that are going into the draft next week? No chance in hell.
No, of course not.
I know maybe 70, right? That I can really recall instantly from, I remember his game in October.
That one game against Northwestern, he really kind of blew it up.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. But and then you see the highlight packages. Then after the draft, May, June, and July, you can start fantasizing and plugging them into your team. But
you start creating them on Madden, put them on your roster.
If you don't think McCormick from South Dakota State was going to get a shout out, my man with the neck roll, big 68, you're kidding yourself, right? Like, I love that possibility.
You're a big neck roll guy. I always knew that about you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Look good, feel good, play good. And if you play good, they will pay good. And I'm excited to see some of these guys get their chance at that bonus money in year 3 and 4.
So what are you thinking as far as the Packers there at 25? Do you have a maybe collection of guys you're hoping the Packers get to choose from? Is there a guy very much in particular you are caping up for, pounding the table, saying they got to draft this dude? What's your approach there?
A couple of the guys that I really, really like, I think they're going to have to go up for. That's the number one thing, Nags. I don't think they pick at 25.
Really?
I mean,
Think there's going to be a little action here?
5 of Goody's 6 years, he has not taken his first round pick in the selected spot.
Yeah,
right.
Fair.
Either moved up last year a couple of spots with the Rodgers trade, got another one with the Devontae trade. So like, I see him getting active. Everyone's favorite Cooper DeJean, right? I think that's an awesome one.
It's a possibility if he goes up. If he goes up, it could be for him.
I think you're going to have to get up past 20 for him. You're going to have to get
past the Eagles. Like that's where I think he'll end up if he's allowed to fall. Yeah.
You're going to have to get to like 17 or 18 to have a swing at like a JC Latham, who's a Milwaukee guy, big right tackle from Alabama.
There you go.
Really like Barton from Duke.
Love Barton, dude.
Who doesn't right now?
His versatility is off the charts. I didn't realize until obviously we started looking at these prospects, right? Man, that kid can play everywhere.
And has.
Exactly. At a high level. Like that's not anything to sneeze at.
And that's something
the Packers value. Like that. Yes,
yep.
Exactly.
Yep. And that's something they value. I also think that they just want to add more competition for not only right guard and left tackle, but what was the number one storyline throughout training camp on the offensive line last year? Who's pushing Josh Myers?
Where's the center competition? And there was one for like 3 days.
Yep, there was one.
And I thought Josh got to run with the ones.
Yeah, and I thought Josh played really well towards the end of last year, but I think they try to bring in more competition with guys that have played center. That's why I think Barton's really intriguing to them. McCormick has played a little bit at the 1AA level, or FCS, pardon me, with South Dakota State. I saw you tweet about Cooper, Edrin Cooper, inside linebacker. Yeah. Peyton Wilson's also a linebacker there that I think people would love.
Sometimes on some plays, he looks like he's shot out of a cannon. Like doesn't always time it up right. Sometimes misses that tackle, but man, you talk about a guy who has no fear and is ready to go sideline to sideline. Man, he's certainly piqued my interest. No question about it.
Yeah, and I think he might go lower. He's going to fall because
agreed.
A little situation, freshman year, a little shum, right? People in Green Bay like that. Well, like that. We all do dumb shit when we're 19.
Yes.
He's also brother of Brewers relief pitcher Bryce Wilson.
Oh, is he really? Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yes.
You dropping the knowledge. Right, okay, there you go. I like it.
Yeah, so I think those are the positions where you could see them go early. I'd be stunned, though, if they don't come out of this with multiple corners. And if Goody is going to swing early, I think he's going to swing at one of those premier spots, which is pass rusher and corner. And I just don't see them going pass rusher back-to-back years. They could.
They could. But yeah, I'd be surprised.
Yeah,
it's a possibility, though. There's no doubt. And look, tackles, we know. Tackle is a premier position as well. And those certainly are on offer in this draft. And if one of these studs falls, unexpectedly, that could be another area where I see Brian maybe make a jump 4 or 5 spots up. If there's a guy that he has, maybe he's like the last blue chipper, you know what I mean, at the tackle position. Okay, yeah, let's go get him. That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, in Fontenot, I believe is how I pronounce his name. Troy, the big man from Washington.
Yes, sir.
Nags, one of the reasons I'm going to love him. You watch that film. You see how high that midriff is. And he's showing it off, right? He's showing it off.
These are the important points of analysis that most people just kind of skim right by, but you dive into it, buddy.
If you're going to play that way and you're going to put yourself on out there like that, you better be mean and you better be able to back it up if you're going to show that much belly.
Neck rolls and midriffs, the keys
that's for sure.
To Billy's heart.
Physical, but he's probably more of a guard. I think they want guys that can probably go play tackle too.
Yeah, probably, especially if they're selecting him on day one. Last thing for you before we head out, there've been rumblings, and I know Tom Silverstein reported that the Packers are interested in doing this, about a possible extension for Kenny Clark, who it would be for the Packers somewhat unusual because they do not traditionally like to hand out those third contracts. But it is interesting because of Kenny's age, the fact that he was so young when he was initially drafted. He's still got a couple years before he hits 30. I don't know, man. I'm a total Kenny stan, 100% fan. I want him signed. I want him to become a Packer for life. But I do understand that, it's a little more difficult than that. And there's a possibility that they just go into this season, probably draft 1 or 2 defensive tackles to try and work rotationally as they maybe bid Kenny Adu next year in free agency. What's your read there? What do you think is going to happen?
I would be in your camp. I'd be pretty surprised if they handed out that third contract. Now the cap number is pretty big, so like I guess I could see if they could feel like they were getting a deal there and into the future.
Right.
But the defensive tackle market is also probably one of the reasons why they would have some interest in it, right? Like if they think that he has an explosion this year in the new defense, moving around a little bit. Right, not just being lined up over the center and playing more traditional nose. How Halfley thinks that he's going to use them. Like, I wonder if they think he's going to be more potent of a pass rusher, and that number gets bigger once they get going. I mean,
get out ahead of it, right?
Dude, defensive tackles are making 26.
I was just going to say, man, this offseason has been the offseason of the defensive tackle when it comes to contract extension.
That's unreal. Like, I did not think guys were going to be making that kind of coin at that spot, but. So like I wonder if that has something to do with their thought of if we get out ahead of this, we do know kind of what he is. The thing that would scare me though, and this is how these dumbass negotiations will end up going,
right?
Where how many games has Kenny Clark missed in his career?
Not
I think
many.
It's like 9.
If that feels high.
That feels high to me. Single digits.
Yeah.
That gets used against you once you get into the negotiation of
especially
played a lot of ball.
Later years, a lot of tread off those tires,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I'd sign him, right? Because he's reliable. You know that he's going to be there. You know he's going to give you what you got. It'll be interesting to see how they look at it that way.
I hope he gets signed. I hope he retires a Packer. Too. That's just me. We'll find out soon enough. I suspect we'll get some kind of news on that front probably after the draft, but who knows? Maybe shock us and do it before the draft. We'll see heading into the offseason. Billy, thanks so much for joining me here on Carry the G Radio, the podcast. Really appreciate you, bro. Talk to you next week.
Ooh, I just got a bruh out of Nags. Let's go.
What's up, bruh?
Zill, get ready to roll with these bruhs when we get on down there first week in September.
Can't wait.